Hello and welcome to Art 209. This is Mr. Ivy's digital animation class. And in this video, I want to give you a brief introduction to all the different materials we're going to be covering over the next couple of weeks. Let's start off with the textbook and our website. I've looked very hard to try to find some sort of text that covers both the traditional animation techniques and the software all in one. And Tradigital Animate CC by Stephen Brooks is a pretty good resource to use. Now, it's not a perfect textbook. We're going to be pulling some things from here and jumping around a little bit, but it is a really good resource to have. In addition to the textbook, the author also has a personal website from rubberonion.com that allows you to download a lot of the project files and see examples of exactly what he's talking about in his textbook. All of the different exercises and projects, however, are going to come from our class Moodle page. So anything that we do regarding this class, you should expect to be able to find it on this Moodle page as the primary source. Now, regarding the software, we're going to be using Adobe Animate CC for all of the projects in this course. If you're not familiar with it, Animate CC is part of Adobe Creative Cloud's suite of entire software. If you have a subscription to Adobe software, then there's a good chance you already have this available to you. If you don't have it, this is going to be made available in the Mac Lab that we have on campus. Regardless, you need to have the most current version of this software to complete all of the projects. However, you will notice that in the textbook and in the online tutorials, the version that we'll be using may be slightly different. However, I'm going to ensure that all of the things that we're doing are current and should be able to work on whatever version of Adobe Animate that you have. So why use Adobe Animate? There are other traditional and digital animating tools out there. Some of these are very powerful and professional. Some of these are free and a little bit easier to use. Well, Adobe Animate does traditional frame-by-frame animation. Some of these do not. Adobe Animate also does digital tweening animation, and we'll talk a little bit about this as well. So it supports all different kinds of animation and animation techniques. Because it's part of the Adobe suite of software, it can also use raster and vector-based art. This means you can create something in Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator and be able to import it and bring it in and use it in Adobe Animate. Because it's part of the Adobe software, it's also compatible with the other range of software. Things that you create in Adobe Animate can be brought into Adobe Premiere or exported for Adobe After Effects and used as visual graphics for other projects. But most importantly, this is still an industry standard animation software. There's lots of different studios that use Adobe Animate as their primary tool for creating and editing simple animations. So let's talk a little bit about the projects and the work that you're going to do for me this semester. In everything that we do, I have two main goals that I want to accomplish. First, I want to teach you how to use the software and how to create good animations using Adobe Animate. So we're going to cover a lot of the tools and the techniques that pertain to this software. But beyond that, I also want you to learn good animation techniques and principles. These techniques and principles are true regardless what software or tools that you use, and they can be applied to any kind of animation that you create. This semester is going to be broken into 7 unique units. Each unit is going to have one project, and every project is going to have a few exercises. Here's how it flows. All of the exercises that we create are like little mini projects. They usually can be completed within one class period. They're meant to help you practice the tools and the techniques that we discuss and demo during the class. They're also going to help you build on whatever you do for your project. All of the projects are larger works. Usually they take a couple of days to complete. They're going to incorporate the topics and the tools and the techniques that we cover for this unit. So pay close attention to what I'm expecting you to demonstrate in this project. Very often there's more than one way of doing something, but the purpose of the project is to give you an idea of how you can do this one particular technique or tool. Finally, by the end of the semester, we're going to have completed a large portfolio of different projects that you can apply towards your career. All of these topics that we're going to be covering will be laid out in our syllabus, and each one is going to build upon the other. So by the end of the semester, you'll have a nice animation portfolio that you can take with you and use for whatever you want in your career. So what about the topics that we're going to cover? These topics are going to cover the same two goals that we have for our projects: how to use the software and the animation techniques and principles. Regarding using the software, you're going to learn how to use the tools of Adobe Animate. Now, if you've used Adobe software before, like Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign, you're going to find that these tools are very common and familiar, though they may act a little bit different. If you've never used the software before, this will be a good introduction on how to use these different tools and its setup. You're going to learn how to create and manipulate artwork for animation purposes, some terminology, and also the workflow and design process that it takes to set up and create a digital animation. Regarding the animation principles, each unit is going to cover several animation principles. These 12 principles are covered or outlined in a book called The Illusion of Life. Every unit is going to show you how to apply these principles to the animations that you create and why they're important. Along the way, we're going to cover some of the history of animation and the terminology, and also a little bit about drawing and style. Let me also cover some other resources that you may find helpful for creating your projects this term. Now keep in mind, everything I'm about to recommend is only a recommendation. It's not required for you to use or to have to complete any of the projects. They're only meant to help you along the way. First, if you've got a digital drawing tablet, these drawing tablets allow you to connect a drawing surface to your computer and to draw in a more natural way. All of the projects that we do can still be created using a mouse or a simple trackpad, but being able to draw on a more natural surface tends to let the process be a little bit more faster and feel a little bit more natural. Also, every good animator needs to have a sketchbook at the ready. Being able to draw or work out your design problems with pencil and paper first often goes much quicker than working only in a digital environment. Also, having a digital camera, especially a camera that has an app or the ability to record in slow motion, is a great way of recording real life and breaking everything down so that you can see the animation of what things are doing. So if you're trying to record a person walking or any kind of quick animation that's difficult to see, this gives you the ability to play it back, to slow it down, and to draw off exactly what you want to do for your animations. If you're interested in learning more about the traditional techniques of animation, these are 3 books that I recommend. Richard Williams' The Animator's Survival Kit, The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, and Cartoon Animation by Preston Blair. Each of these covers not only the traditions and techniques and principles of animation, but also a lot of the history that it goes into to create these kinds of animation. Many of the exercises and projects that I've developed for this course come from these 3 books. If you're interested in learning specifically about the software of Adobe Animate, these are the 2 books that I recommend. Every year, Adobe comes out with a classroom in a book series that teaches you how to use their different software, and they've got one for Adobe Animate as well. Just make sure you've got the version that you're using right now. Also, there is How to Cheat in Adobe Animate. This is by Myra Ferguson and Chris Georginas. These are great little tools, tips, and techniques that help you use and work within the Adobe Animate software. Finally, I want to cover some of the expectations about what this class is going to cover. First, let me talk about what this class is not going to be. Even though it's an art class, this is not a drawing class, and you're not expected to have any kind of background in drawing as a prerequisite to take this class. However, if you do want to be an animator, I do recommend having some sort of training in drawing, but at no time am I going to teach drawing techniques or principles for the projects that we do. This is also not a complete animation program. This is very much an introduction to animation and the techniques and the principles that can be applied to them. There's a lot more topics that we simply don't have time to cover in order to be a good professional animator, but this should give you a good introduction to get your feet wet on all of the different projects. Finally, this class is not a character design or story development class. Again, it's an introduction to animation. Character design, story development, writing, acting, lighting, stagecraft, all of that goes into creating a good animation, and we simply don't have time to cover those techniques. I do recommend covering them or taking a class in them if you are interested in being a professional animator. So what is this class? I've said it before, this is an introduction to animation and to the software. We're going to be covering just the basics to get you up and running and using this software for your career. This is also an appreciation for the craft and the history of animation. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a good experience and exposure to a wide variety of animation techniques and history that it takes to create animation today. Finally, this is meant to be a portfolio builder for your career. If you're interested in using animation in your career, this will give you the stepping stones and the tools to add to your portfolio so that you can take with you to a job interview and use it within your own career. I'm very excited to get this class started, and I hope you are too. So let's jump into the first unit.